In 1587, an expedition led by John White would be among the first to land in the new land. Once landed, a colony was promptly built, but would soon find themselves running out of supplies. But after 2 long years, he returned and is greeted with an eerie sight. Nothing. The only clue left behind was the word CROATOAN carved into a wooden fence, being the only structure left from the colonists. Where did the colonists go? Were they ravaged by Native Americans? Was it aliens? And how does Nicolas Cage get a mention in this story? Find out as we attempt to unearth the lost colony of Roanoke. Hey Siri, with so much gusto. I was so sure of myself. Hey Siri.
That's I love that. That's a perfect intro. So you activate everyone's fucking home pod.
That's so fucking funny. Oh God. Hello everybody, welcome to the I'm Not Crazy podcast. My name is Andrew Venor. I'm your host. Today we are joined by the illustrious Vinn Quinn.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Good to have you back.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. So you just heard the intro. We changed up the format a tad. We're going with the intro first to kind of give it a little bit of a hook and reel type situation. You know, if you're a fisherman, you get what I'm talking about. Shout out to all my fishermen out there. Oh, no, stop it. We have to record.
I wasn't reeling you in. I was actually trying to... Never mind.
Since we're here, you know, I know it's kind of awkward. We got here at the same time. We're both wearing the same outfit. You know, I know it's kind of awkward, but... So here's the thing. I'm going to go into reviews for a second, all right? This whole episode is actually about reviews, okay? So if you write a review, it takes 2 seconds. You write a review, say, hey, it's a good podcast. 5 star. Or whatever stars you want to give it. But 5 stars is great. Just write one. Just write it. You know, right now. Do it right now. Pause it and write it. Pull your car over. You're on the highway. I don't give a fuck. Pull it over. Figure it out. It's not my fault. So... the sources for this episode consist of a lot of things. I feel like I've watched 15 documentaries about Roanoke. It is one of America's first folklores.
Yeah, it's
pretty cool.
Probably the thing I know most about going into one of these.
We're going to just jump right the fuck into it. Once again, quoting Philip DeFranco. Again, second episode in a row.
What's up?
We're going to start with the found colony, which is interesting considering we're talking about a lost colony. Well, but I guess... to be lost, you must be found. In 1587, Sir Walter Raleigh, of course, we all know him well, would commission a settlement to be built in the New World, being the first for England. Though a couple of other attempts have been made, at this point, none of them had been successful for reasons that we will explore in just a bit. Among the 120 some odd people who volunteered for the expedition, among them was John White, the main character of this story. He would be joined by his pregnant daughter and her husband, and set sail for the month-long trip across the Atlantic. They were a month-long on a boat.
Okay, so it took him 2 years to get back, but it only took a month? In my head, it must have taken longer since it took him 2 years to get back there.
So the 2 years to get back there's a reason for that. Okay. It is not just, there is a conflict happening at the same time as Roanoke, which is very interesting. Also, totally forgot. We said we were going to do it, totally forgot. Shout out to my mom.
Yo, shout out Mama Venor.
Thank you. Watching. She listened to 3 episodes so far. Word for word, first episode she listened to, she said, I listened to the episode with you and Matthew, because he's my cousin, and I thought it was all right. That was what she said. And I really appreciate Mom. Honestly, warms my heart. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. No, she loved Mothman, and she loved The Watcher.
Awesome.
And she's going to start listening to more. I'm excited for her to get to Chupacabra, and I'm excited for her to get to Van Meter, because it turns out she really liked Mothman a lot. So I actually think she's going to like the monster episodes. But cool. We'll get there when we get there, mother. All right. They would go over the month-long trip all across the Atlantic. We said that already. The colonists eventually made it to the island of Roanoke, just off the coast of modern-day North Carolina, which I was surprised. I thought it was off of the coast of Virginia. But it turns out it's the colony of Virginia, right, which was just the entire area before it was actually colonized and made into the 13 states.
Gotcha.
Interesting what you learn. The goal was to make it to Chesapeake Bay, as the area had been explored already, and due to unknown reasons, the group landed in Roanoke and was ordered to stay there by the captain, forcing them to search out the remains for one of Riley's failed colonies, which again we will talk about in a little bit. Though in ruins, the buildings were located and the colonists began to make do with what was left. I couldn't find a solid reason why. I couldn't really even find a speculative reason why, but it seems like the captain was just like, I don't want to go any further. Can we just stop here? And John White was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's your boat.
And it just happened to be one of Raleigh's, like...
No, they knew they had been there before, so that's why he was like, whatever, that's fine.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, Raleigh, North Carolina. That actually makes sense.
So there's a lot of names in this story. There's so Raleigh is just a famous name in old American lore in general. John White is big figure from this story. John Smith is amongst one of the people on the ship in this expedition, which he doesn't come into the story at all, but I just thought that was interesting. Like any of the famous explorers coming from England were a part of these journeys because they just kept going to the same areas over and over, for reasons we will see in a tad. I don't mean to keep pushing everything off till later, but there's a lot of information. But the colonists were not alone. In fact, there were no less than 5 Native American tribes living just a few tens of miles in any direction, and this caused a lot of fear for the settlers. One of their own had already been killed by natives, giving more of a reason for the settlers to fear the new land around them. And just like past explorations had been attacked by natives in the area, they were also attacked by natives in the area, and they decided that they would move just 50 miles north, but would request before they did that John White would return to England to gather some supplies. So this is a piece of information that always gets left out of the story, is that they did plan on moving. They weren't going to stay there forever, but they did plan on staying there for a couple of years to kind of build themselves up before they moved inland, because as much as they had explored some of the parts of the actual land that they were just outside of, it was still very new to them, and there was a lot of tribes, and people were getting killed left and right.
Just came across the water.
And plus they were also fighting the Spanish, which we'll get more into later, so they were worried about Spanish ships coming, raiding them, and killing them.
Right.
So there was a lot of hesitancy to moving onto the land. So for now, they would hang out on the island, build themselves up. So after the second group of settlers came in and they all met up in Roanoke, then they would eventually move on land to where they could build a more permanent, safe city and less of like a small colony. The first permanent colony in America is Jamestown, which I think is pretty fair. Jamestown, Plymouth Rock, like those are the ones that actually were successful, and that's why we have so much from them. But these also played a huge role in American lore from early days of like there are certain names that are going to come up in here that I'll get into them when they come up, but they are still embedded in American culture. He agreed to set sail, being John White, and he left the colony of Roanoke behind, leaving all the people behind, including his daughter and his daughter's new daughter. Which, fun fact, John White's daughter would give birth in Roanoke, and to her daughter, Virginia Dare. And now the name Virginia Dare is a very common name in America. When you hear like there's a lot of Virginia Dare products, a lot of things are named Virginia Dare, and it's interesting because it's named after this baby who would be the first English child to be born in a New World colony. But what's super interesting, and I find this to be such a fucking sad fact of the time, is that we don't know anything about her past literally the first 2 weeks of her life
because she was in Roanoke.
It is wild.
Wow.
Yeah, it's super crazy. It's kind of creepy.
Right, the name just so long outlasted.
Dare to be square.
Dare, again, the one against drugs.
Virginia.
The state.
So now we're going to get into the Lost Colony.
Let's do it.
So the found colony was the colony they found.
The old Raleigh one.
Originally hoping to be back within a year. John White did not end up back at Roanoke until 2 full years later. Almost a little over 2 full years. It's like 2 years and a month or something like that. Due to conflict with the Spanish at the time, the Anglo-Spanish War, no ships were permitted to leave England as all firepower was needed in the water. So basically any ships that could be used for battle were kept in England because they needed everything they had. So after a long year of back and forth, John White was finally permitted to return to Roanoke with 2 resupply ships, which would be accompanying 4 other ships in the Caribbean, where split and go their separate ways. So basically what happened was after 2 years of desperately trying to get back to Roanoke, because he had family there, he really wanted to get back. The Queen finally allowed Riley to get an expedition going. They set up 2 ships for resupply, and they followed a fleet of 4 other ships that was being used at the time to raid Spanish naval ships. So they would go to the New World, follow the coastline, find naval ships that were alone, and raid them for their supplies, and sometimes take the ships back to England.
So the war was still going on when he was...
The war was right in the peak at this point. They were heavily fighting. And because of this, what they would do is they brought them to the Caribbean. John White actually helped in the raids against the Spanish in the Caribbean. And then once everything was finished up, then they went their separate ways, and John White decided to go back to Roanoke. But once the ships arrived, confusion struck. The colony had all but vanished. Nothing had been left. No settlers, no trace of buildings, nor the trace of death. Just nothing, as if they had never been there. The only message the settlers left behind was the word CROATOAN carved into a wooden fence and the letters CRO carved into a tree. White would attempt to search for the settlers on the nearby island of CROATOAN, assuming this is where the settlers had gone. Thank you, Benjamin, for the sounds. But strong winds would decide otherwise, and the resupply ships would have to return to England. Unfortunately, White would pass just before knowing the fate of the settlers and his own daughter and granddaughter, but until the very end had faith that his family had lived on. He left the Caribbean, went down, got to Roanoke, did a couple days trying to figure out what the fuck happened. There is zero sign, there were no buildings, there is nothing. There is a single fence post left from a wooden palisade, which are like those big gates.
Right.
One fence post, and it just had CROATOAN in it, and then a tree that had CRO and nothing else, and that is the only things they were able to find. Now, mind you, we are 450 years out from the story, right? So, like, a lot of it could have been, exaggeration, whatever. But if we are to believe what happened here the way it happened according to the legend, there hadn't even been a sign that there was building on the land. Like, the land looked brand new as if no one had ever been there.
Right.
So what that has to mean is that the people very quickly left.
Yes.
Almost immediately after.
Right. That or for some reason dismantled the buildings themselves.
We're going to get more into what that could possibly be in the theory's end, but really, this is the main story. So this is the story of Roanoke. Yeah, John White arrives, drops them off, comes back 2 years later, no one's there.
Right. That's the majority of what I knew about the story already. Like, it was really all those details. It's like the most popular.
This is the legend of Roanoke.
Yeah.
What this legend tends to do is it tends to make it out like John White discovered the island of Roanoke, colonized it, which isn't at all true. And now we're going to get into the first colony, which is the colony that they restored. And what happened at that colony, because I feel like the circumstances of that give us an idea of why the circumstances were different when these people disappeared compared to when they left the first time and left everything behind and didn't take anything with them.
Right.
Are you crying? Is it that moving?
I was literally holding in a yawn, and I was like, just my eyes started tearing instead. And I was just like,
is it because the story is so good?
It's because it's so good. The writing, the narration is really just touching me in places I didn't think that audio could.
His cock. So the first colony, historical sidebar!
Historical sidebar!
Kind of. I mean, the whole episode is a historical sidebar. But,
true.
This is literally 2 years before the episode, but
historical sidebar.
Historical sidebar. Mm-hmm. It's a historical square sidebar. Mm-hmm. As we had said, this is usually how the story is told, but there is more to it. So as we had mentioned multiple times before, there had been another attempt to colonize Roanoke before. In fact, it seems there were actually 2 attempts. So Roanoke was originally founded by the first expedition, and it was just to scope out the area for land. They were not going to colonize it. But this was in 1584. While there, the explorers, including John White, who was part of the first expedition in 1584, took note of the natural resources and made early maps. They also came in contact with 2 tribes. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time, because I'm definitely going to get these wrong. They also came in contact with 2 tribes. The CROATOAN, who lived on Roanoke, so they could also be considered like the tribe of Roanoke, and the CROATOAN, who lived on the island of CROATOA. Both of these tribes showed hospitality to these explorers on this first expedition. So much so that one member of each tribe was brought back to England to show gratitude for their help. These 2 being Wanchese the leader of the Roanoke tribe, the CROATOAN people, and Menteo, the son of the leader of the CROATOAN. So it was a woman who led the CROATOAN. She was the head of the tribe. It was her son. Menteo plays just as big of a role in this as John White. And the entire time, John White was kind of like, I don't know if it's written this way because history could do this, but it seems like John White was a lot less brutal than a lot of the other explorers, and he had a lot more respect for the natives.
Wasn't John White who the character, the white dude, was based off of?
John Smith.
Oh, sorry, John Smith.
Yeah.
Who was
two different people.
Right.
It's England at the time. There's like 6 surnames, and they're all named fucking John or Ralph.
Or Smith.
As a reward for the expedition's success, Riley would be given the land of Virginia by the Queen, explaining why they keep trying to conquer the same land over and over again. It may seem weird that there's this giant coastline and they keep landing at the same fucking 2-island area over and over, but it's because this land was given to him. So this is his land.
To Raleigh
to create a colony. So that's why these keep landing in similar areas and they keep ending up in the same areas, because they just want to conquer this area because this is his land. So what's also interesting about this is that Raleigh, it seems like, went back to England and really hyped up what the expedition was and what they had found, and made it literally sound like they had found the promised land of... the 2 places that they compare it to is the land of gold, I think, which is the Greek promised land, and then the Garden of Eden. That's what you compared it to.
I've been to North Carolina.
It's definitely not either of those. No. I can tell you that. It is it is sweaty. I can't think of a single other way to describe something right now. It's hot.
Full of cul-de-sacs.
Full of cul-de-sacs.
Well, I guess it wasn't back then, but...
A lot of circles.
A lot of circles.
A lot of circles. I declare. I don't know if that's racist. English Governor Ralph Lane would be commissioned by Raleigh for the mission to colonize. I love that sentence.
Mission to colonize.
Yeah, the mission to colonize.
Makes it sound cool, but...
So Ralph Lane, Lane County.
Big. Yeah,
another big county name.
Right. Lane is a big one.
Huge.
Even the name Ralph Lane sounds familiar.
Ralph Lane was a big politician of the time. So he was, I believe he came to later colonies and was like a person who was in charge of those colonies later on, I believe. The plan was to send a fleet of 7 ships with about 600 men and women to a place to build a colony. They would build a colony, explore the lands around them to scope out potential resources for both themselves and England, and eventually half of the group would go back to England to resupply and gather more people to build the settlement. So they were going to go to this area wherever they were going, the island of Roanoke, which they had scoped out. They would go there, build a colony. 300 people would stay behind. 300 would go back. Eventually, those 300 would come back with more supplies, and then they would have a proper colony.
Gotcha. I thought it was 600 on each ship. And in my head, I was like doing math. Like, damn, they sent
no 600 total. People. 600 total. Yeah, gotcha. I believe it's like 80 a ship or something like that.
Still a lot of people, though.
That's a
small town. That's a small town.
And the fleet, I found out a lot about English fleets at this time too. They had a bunch of different types of ships. They had like 2 really, really big ships, 4 like speed boats of the time. They were like these super agile small ships, and then they had a bunch of these like smaller canoe things that they would use to go on land, so that they wouldn't have to bring the big ships on land, so they wouldn't get marooned.
Right. Saw it in Sea of Thieves.
Sea of Thieves, where you don't get anything but skins. Super boring game in my opinion, but if you like it, I don't mind, because I'm open-minded.
I don't.
Thanks. Unfortunately for the travelers, the ship carrying all the food named Tiger, not the Tiger, not Tiger of the Sea, not Tiger Wind, just fucking Tiger.
Hey, Tiger.
Tiger. It would hit a large shoal, which is basically like an exposed part of, a non-exposed hump of land in water. So at the time, they didn't have radar. I don't know if you knew that. They didn't have radar in 1584. So they couldn't see the shoal under them. Who would have thunk? It would hit the large shoal, as said, and destroy a very large portion of the food, if not all the food, from what they said.
Bad start.
This would cause a change of plans, and only a group of 100 or so would have to stay behind because they didn't have enough food to feed the original 300 colonists that would stay. The rest would go back to England earlier than expected to once again resupply. During this time, the colonists and the natives' relationship would flourish on the island, with help from both Wanchese and Menteo, who would both return from England on this trip. So they went to England after the 1584 trip, came back on the 1585 trip, and they will actually go back to England at the end of this trip and then come back on the the last Roanoke trip.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Monchis would stay back. Monteo would go back.
That's so interesting to me that there was Native Americans were traveling back to England with colonists.
What's interesting about this is this was how it started, and then what started happening is they would bring Native Americans back and force them to take their religion. More or less, they would bring them as like a middleman endorser for Christianity to tribes to then get them, and then they would just kill them all with smallpox.
Of course, it had to be ruined.
Oh, the English are fucking honestly brutal at this time. Like from this story really does show that the natives had, for the most part in the area, the Native American tribes in the area were non-confrontational, and they didn't really necessarily like to fight, and they didn't fight you unless they felt wronged by you. Right. And it seems like they really helped a lot of the Europeans that came in the area for the most part, as long as you didn't wrong them. But as we will see, typical to English fashion of the time, they would fucking royally ruin it.
Yeah, we know how the story goes, unfortunately.
And this is where we get to that point. The relationship wouldn't last, however.
So go ahead.
And the first incident would be over a silver cup.
Oh, come on.
So apparently, the cup was the only thing missing from the English camp, and the colonists had decided that the natives had to have stolen it. So as to not show weakness to their friends towards the supposed theft, the English proceeded to burn down their entire village, destroyed their crops. Don't know how. Monteos, from a different tribe, managed to smooth things over between the Succotan people and the colonists. But the tensions would continue to rise. Yeah. But basically what happened was during this time, the tensions obviously were very tense because of the burned village. And the English didn't understand. They almost didn't, they didn't look at them as people, which is strange. So they almost were just like, look at those silly guys getting mad over there. And they just weren't paying attention, but they just kept moving closer and closer. Right?
Just expanding.
They just kept moving closer and closer and building forts, like little things closer and closer to the English. They were obviously getting closer to attack them. And then something strange started to happen.
Sorry, other way around.
No. The English were in Roanoke making their colony blind to the fact that tribes are coming in on them.
Gotcha.
Because they're now annoying everyone in the area. It seems like the CROATOAN are the only ones that are fucking with them at this point. But for reasons that the CROATOAN are like 10 miles south, so they're not dealing with their fuckery. Right. Just for lack of a better way to put it. This is now the point where the English start to explore the area around them, and they start to go to some of the other areas, mainland, to just explore, and they start coming in contact with other tribes, including one of the largest cities in the area, built by one of the tribes in the area. I don't have their name because there's a lot of historical information here, and unfortunately, this is not an episode of Native American Tribes of the North Carolina area. But it wouldn't be. It's extremely boring.
Specifically North Carolina,
boring.
But we talked about it.
Extremely boring content for just. Welcome back to Area 1. We're going to cover the top 10 miles of North Carolina this time. Every time the English would visit a settlement, or one of the big cities as they called them, the natives would start to get sick and die. And the Succotan started to notice it wasn't just them. Other tribes were experiencing the same problem, with sickness plaguing their communities. The natives all around the English started to feel that there were supernatural elements at play, and started to slowly make preparations to kill the English, and save those that were left from the now unidentified smallpox and influenza. Obviously, we know what it is now, but at the time, they thought that by killing them, they would save the rest of their people from these magical diseases.
Right.
And once the brother of the Succotan leader died of a mystery illness, the tides turned. This is at the point where Wanchis would change his name, and this was a symbol in Native American culture that would show a shift in the tribe. If the leader changed their name to something that was different, it would mean that the tribe was now almost, for a fucking complete lack of way to put it, if you're playing a real-time strategy game and you could set like a little army that you have from like aggressive to defensive, that's what the changing name was.
I'd say it's like war mode.
They'd be like, all right, well, now we know we have to stay on guard at night, you know?
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
That's such an interesting mechanic for like that signaling, like, hey,
mechanic.
Oh yeah, now I'm thinking of it in terms of a fucking RTS game.
That is an interesting mechanic. Yeah, this is a cool mechanic these Native Americans use. He would change his name to Pemasepan, which would mean the person on watch, or the watcher. Gotcha. Which is, the watcher just keeps popping up. It's so cool.
Everything connects here.
We are in a simulation. On April 20th, he died, actually. 420 plays it, bro.
Wow, shit.
Hitler's birthday.
Yeah. 420 Blaze It, Hitler's birthday, and
the death of the Succotan's brother, leader's brother.
Monchay's, but
Permissipan.
Cool.
Yeah, Permissipan's a fucking Permissipan. Sorry, no,
Permissipan, that is a cool name.
Permissipan is a cool fucking name. I'm gonna start calling you Permissipan.
If you can nail that, like remember and nail that, hell yeah.
You got that, Vinn. Fuck. So once the leader died, basically what happened is the natives would again slowly start making their way closer and closer, preparing for an attack. The English weren't aware, and one day, I believe 2 natives came onto the English property and wanted to give one of the leaders of the colony, one of the people that was like in charge of an area in the colony, whatever it was, they wanted to give them a gift. Walked over to them and stabbed them with a wooden knife. Killed them on the spot. And then as soon as that happened, 28 other natives jumped out and started shooting at them and killing them. And now, mind you, there were 120 people at the colony, but that includes women and children, who at the time were basically just targets for arrows. Right. They just did nothing. The natives would eventually start to attack the colonists, as we said, and after a bunch of misfortunes, that is way too long to get into now, the English would evacuate the land, leaving just 15 men to maintain the English presence on the land. All 15 were lost at sea after fleeing from the natives just days after they had been left there.
Yeah, kind of expected.
Yeah, and that brings us right up to the Lost Colony. So this is why they left so abruptly, and the Lost Colony was able to go to their ruined colony. This was the colony they found the first time.
Which we still had buildings there and stuff.
Yes. Right. We are going to get into the generally accepted theories of the story. Because now most of the story is out of the way. Now most of it is going over theories and trying to get to the bottom of it, right? We're going to get into the generally accepted theories of the story now because we basically got over the whole bulk of it. And now it's time to get into the idea of what could have possibly happened to the people of Roanoke. So there were a lot of politics involved in the story as we got into the Anglo-Spanish War, the politics with the Native American tribes. It seems like the tribes of the area all were cool with each other but didn't fuck with the English. Some of them did, some of them didn't, but it didn't seem to cause problems between the tribes, just the English, which is kind of interesting. And because the story has now become a piece of American folklore, a lot is left out to condense it and make it this neat little legend of all these people went to a land and they disappeared and that was it. And it's just not that, you know, necessarily. Aliens.
Oh, God, really?
Soon.
Oh. Should have expected it.
The land of Roanoke has also changed with about a quarter mile of shoreline now underwater. So this was, again, 450 years ago. Within 450 years, the ocean levels rise and about a quarter mile worth of shoreline has been lost.
Gotcha.
It is a good chance that this is where they built, if they actually built in that area of Roanoke. And there are people that are literally like volunteers in the water with shovels digging blindly in the water, but the chance of them finding, they brought out two professional divers in one of the documentaries I watched, and the 2 divers were like, yeah, I mean, there's going to be stuff from the 1500s because that's how the world works, things that get buried. He was like, but you're not going to find it with a shovel. Like, you have to go deep underground. We took 450 years of sand and mud and
sediment, and it's
just there's no way you're going to just shovel up a good you might find a little bit of something, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And lo and behold, we will see. So that being said, we are going to go from covering the most likely answers all the way down to aliens. Because that's how we do it here. We're going to start with the fact and leave you thinking, but what if?
What if? What if, folks?
So when John White arrived back at the Phantom Colony, he searched the area extensively, which was all documented in his logs. No traces of anything were found, positive or negative. No buildings, no clothes, nor traces of human remains were found in the area. This tells us it's more likely that people moved by their own volition. If they were being attacked and needed to flee, the remains of the colony would have been found as it was in 1587 when John White and his colony found the remains of the expedition a few years prior. Instead, finding nothing indicates the people not only moved, but they took all of their stuff with them.
Right.
So I feel like the fact that they tore all their buildings down means that there was a planned move. And whether they did it quick or not, that move is important because I don't think that they were just killed on the spot by Native Americans.
Right,
I just don't.
What happened to the buildings?
Exactly.
They're not gonna, go away after 2 years.
Exactly. They're not going to just rot away. Realistically, from the time that the colonists landed to when John White found them is the same amount of time from when the original expedition landed to when the lost colonists found them. So it
should have been something similar.
They would have found the exact same result. And the original was overgrown. They said it was overgrown with melons, which must have been so much fun. Just be like, oh my god, there is so much fucking food for us to have to clear out of our doorways.
What are we gonna do with all this
fucking honeydews? Like, oh, this is good. I love honeydews. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my the word eating.
When the watermelon asked the cantaloupe's dad for his daughter's hand in marriage, what'd he say?
What?
He said, "Well, I'm happy you came to me, and you didn't just cantaloupe." I said that wrong. Since we can deduce the colonists left by their own free will, we could get rid of any theories including a mass slaughter, at least on the land. This means that we can logically assume the colonists moved to a place where they didn't fear the locals attacking them, or they had a good enough relationship with the locals where they didn't attack them. So those are the two possibilities. Mm. And experts lean towards the people going to the island of CROATOAN through a variety of possible reasons, including the fact that CROATOAN was carved into the shit, and the long relationship between Mantios and the English. So they figured they would go with who they knew, and they would go where this colony was giving them food in the past. They protected them. They couldn't stop the other tribe from attacking them, but they would at least help them in terms of keeping them alive.
It makes a lot more sense why the word CROATOAN was carved into a tree.
Exactly.
Spooky.
Exactly. But we're going to get into the spooky later, because there was spooky with CROATOAN.
There's some spooky options left.
This is also backed up by evidence found by the CROATOAN Archaeological Society. This consisted of a writing tablet, a 19th century gun hardware, parts of a sword, a rapier hilt, which is also a part of a sword, and pottery shards, and even a floral clothing clasp belonging to a woman. That is a little assumptuous. So, it could have belonged to a man too, you fucking insensitive prick. Or vagina.
Together in the 16th century there.
Yeah, what the fuck? So they found a bunch of shit in that land, and it all dated back to the right area, which you would think would be a fucking, a slam dunk, right?
Right.
Future expeditions show evidence of European-looking Native Americans also found in the area. So Native Americans with European features.
Yeah.
Alluding to the fact that the colonists could have assimilated with the tribe. And the reason for the assimilation is still seen to be most likely out of force. So it doesn't really seem like they would have done it like, come live here, you're good. Because they were most likely forced, this means that the men were most likely captured and killed, while the women and children were brought there and brought into their tribe. So they were made part of their tribe, and they would just contribute the way you would. And what are you going to do?
Right. At that point.
What are you going to build a secret boat and go back to England? You're fucked. That's it. You're there. For multiple years in the future, other explorers have been said to have gone back to that area in the 1600s, claiming to have met natives who spoke English or looked like them. Though this is the most logical answer, other stuff was also found, which was dated back to the 17th century, meaning that contact with other settlers at the time was very possible, possibly bringing these older items with them. The conclusion is far more mysterious. Okay. This is all assuming they also weren't just all murdered after brought back to a colony.
Right.
So this is the leading theory, is that they moved and they were assimilated with the tribe. What I feel, just by how everything went in the past, and again, I am not a historian. This is just from my brief dive into the subject. What I feel happened, or could have happened, was that the colonists, after John left, were being attacked over and over, and they were being attacked more and more now that their leader had gone. So to more or less avoid that, they just said, you know what, fuck this, let's just leave. They gathered all their stuff, they tore down their buildings, so they had building supplies to put a quick colony up somewhere else. And on the way to wherever they were going, were captured by one of the more hostile Native American tribes and assimilated into their tribe. Right. By the means that we said, kill the men, keep the women and children. This could make sense to why European type features were found with Native Americans later, but also, again, it was very common for explorers to just make shit up. because they were explorers, and you wanted to be the one to find the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And when you are one of 18 people who have been to a new fucking continent, you could come back and go, yeah, no, there were giant giraffes that jump over treetops. And it's like, you could just say that, because who's going to prove you wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
You were in, could possibly be what people thought was the Holy Land.
Right.
So you could have went and said, I met Jesus Christ himself. And they would have been like, well, good shit, fucking Ralph Lane.
I mean, they described North Carolina as this promised land. So
North Carolina.
it's a beautiful, mythical Greek afterlife. What was it?
Lots of shootings. As we said, this is the most logical answer.
Right.
It is also probably the most boring answer, realistically. So that's why we start with that.
Of course.
This is the real answer.
Most logical is the most boring.
There is a second runner-up that is actually way closer to being considered just as true as the first one.
I just saw the title and
this one is so fucking cool.
I do not know how this is going. I'm very
This is
excited.
so cool. The next one is called National Treasure is Real. Woo!
Nick Cage, baby, what's up? He's be on the next episode, right?
National Treasure is Real. The next leading theory is the coolest fucking thing that I think I found on this show by mistake. This is so cool. This got me excited the way that finding that Pigman document got me excited. Go watch the Pigman episode.
Oh, that's right. I have to watch that.
Bro, during the Pigman episode, I was researching, and I was originally going to just cover the legend of Pigman. I wasn't going to cover it from the perspective of like this one specific town. And then I just found this document. It blew me away, and I was like, this is the coolest shit ever. This was that. I was so excited when I found this. Mm-hmm. The theory claims the colonists actually traveled into the land northwest of Roanoke, going towards the mainland, right?
Gotcha.
This would lead to the Salmon Creek area, which is what we're talking about. But why would the colonists uproot everything to move to a blind piece of land that was probably heavily occupied by natives? Well, what if I told you that there might have been a secret fort built there? Let me explain. In 2011, researchers at the First Colony Foundation would start to investigate a patch of cloth on the map made by John White himself in 1585 during the first failed expedition. Fun fact about this map is considered to be the most accurate map of that area for that century. This patch wasn't unusual, as cloth was kind of expensive back then, so patching an area was an easy fix to go over a mistake. So they would fuck up and patch it. But what was beneath the patch shook the investigators. Shook them. It's a shock, but I read shook. They were shooketh. It would seem a fort symbol had been marked on the map and then patched with cloth. But even more interesting, it would seem the patch had the same symbol on it, but instead, it was drawn with a mixture of piss and milk. This was used at the time to make invisible ink, which only could be activated with heat, just like in National Treasure, when Nicolas Cage is fucking hair drying the literal fucking Declaration of Independence, which is hilarious. It turns out that in the movie, they say milk and lemon juice, which is correct. You can. But in the old days, most likely they would use piss when they were on their boats because they didn't do anything with the piss. It was just there. Yeah. And it would just be, most likely there is ammonia in the piss, which would cause the chemical reaction needed. So you would more or less write with this. It would be invisible. And when you heat it up, you would see the remnants of it. So more or less.
A legit thing they actually used to do.
This was known to be a thing they did at the time often. They would write invisible notes to each other. It was a way for them to communicate more or less in a spy-like way. It was their spy
right.
Of the time.
All for milk and piss, baby.
All for milk and piss. Yeah. All milk and piss. What does that remind me of? Oh, milk and pepper. So, David Bowie in the 80s, in the 70s.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Addicted to cocaine for years. Really bad for the entire second half of the 70s. He only lived off of milk and peppers. Huh? That being said, it is very possible a secret fort was constructed to aid in the conquest of small Spanish fleets in the area. As we had stated earlier, the English and Spain were at war. The English and Spain were at war, meaning the fort may have been kept a secret, even going as far as making the location only known to a select few. This then combined with the fact that English artifacts were also found from the correct time period in the area that the fort could have been, concludes that most likely, there was at least a fort there that we know of. Could the colonists have gone to the secret fort for shelter, and records from this were just lost to time? We may never know, but we also may. You know, that's how life works.
That was a lot more plausible than I thought.
It is so crazy because you start and you're like, oh, this is cool, but there's no way, right? But this, in my opinion, sounds more plausible than the first fucking theory.
It kind of, yeah.
You know, because my thing with that is if the second theory is true, eventually that area was colonized.
Right.
Right? Like, not too long after that.
Right.
So, like, no one went to the Native American tribes and checked. Apparently, people did, but like nothing was concrete. Like nothing ever happened.
It's not like there wasn't any relationship with them. Like they communicated.
There was,
we talked about that before. You know,
there was a decent back and forth with them in terms of record keeping and stuff like that. In terms of like England to the colonies or the attempted colonies, they actually kept records of everything. Like we have records of who was on the ships by name. That's how we know that John White was on the ships, even though he's not really mentioned in the stories. Pretty cool. The next section is called Water Drip Splash RIP Takeoff.
RIP.
Just hopped off a 16 passenger. This is G5. No, this ain't no Challenger. Big one. A lesser known theory, Water Drip Splash, but still a logical theory. It's the. What? Benjamin just tried to take me down.
Cats are going crazy. It's about that time in the episode.
Come here. Come here. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to pick him up. It's going to be part of the. Come here. All right.
Yeah, it's all snuggled in.
Yeah, there you go, baby. So, you want to say something? Say something? No? Okay. That's okay. So, a lesser known, but still logical theory is actually pretty simple. By studying trees in the area, researchers discovered that from 1857 to 1859, the area had literally been experiencing its worst drought in 800 years.
Yeah.
The colonists would have had no way of knowing this ahead of time, so they almost certainly were not prepared for this when they arrived, and they would have made growing food almost impossible in the area, which would have made sense on why they relied on the natives and why the natives are so mad about the reliance on them after a while for food. Right. Sorry, baby boy. Didn't mean to fucking love you.
800 years, 1,000-year drought. Like
800 years, and they happen to get there in the 2 years that it's fucked. Yeah. How crazy is that?
And they, like for natural disaster stuff, they rated in like it's 100-year storm or it's a 1,000-year storm.
This is a 800-year drought.
Yeah, that's wild.
So this would give a reason also to why the settlers left, but doesn't really answer the real actual question, which is where they go. Right. This could be a reason or a contributing reason why they left, but this to me doesn't really get to where did they go.
Right, I mean, doesn't explain it.
Doesn't give you anything.
Just another reason for why they could have left or why they probably left.
Exactly, Vincenzo. So this next part of the episode is called Spooky Finally.
Spooky
Finally, because now we get so spooky. So if you were waiting this whole time, when are we going to get to spooky? There's so much history. This is the time. So now that we got to study all the stupid science out of the way, let's talk about what really happened. First, we are going to touch on the possible monsters that could have been blamed here. First off, the most famous of the bunch, and least likely in my professional opinion as a monster researcher, the Wendigo. And I will get into this. There's a very, very quick and easy way to go. This probably couldn't have been a Wendigo, other than the fact that it's probably not fucking real. But, you know.
That too.
Though the proper episode about the Wendigo is inevitable, it will happen in the future.
Waiting for it.
Let me give a small rundown of what it is. According to the legend, those who eat the flesh of their own, a.k.a. humans that eat other humans.
Cannibal.
In other words, cannibalism.
Gross.
Dahmer. This is how we know Wendigos aren't real. Dahmer.
True. There are tons of examples of people eating people.
Would transform into a grotesque creature amongst eating the flesh. They would then wander the woods for eternity, constantly needing to feed.
Spooky.
So there's two different legends, actually. There's one that it transforms, and then there's one that a spirit enters the body and takes over the body of the Wendigo.
Isn't where the term skinwalker comes from?
No. So skinwalkers are different. So skinwalkers are shapeshifters.
Got it. Okay. It sounds like a slur for a Wendigo.
Wendigo, yeah, right? Yeah, these fucking skinwalkers.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, don't say that. I do not feel that this is the case. Even though it's fun to think that the colony, I mean, it's not fun to think. The colony ran out of food and started to eat each other. And then they all turned into these creatures, and then they all just kind of scattered, and they're in the woods these days. Right. That's cool. That's a cool, like, kind of legend.
The cannibalism is more plausible than...
But, you know, I'm going to be a little stick in the mud on this, you know?
Why?
You know, and by stick in the mud, it just means that I'm going to fall over, I think. I don't really understand that saying. I do not feel this is the case, because the Wendigo is not native to this part of the Americas. Plain and simple. It was a legend held by tribes in the Minnesota's Northwoods, the forests of the Great Lake regions, and the central regions of Canada. And I think this is something that's really fucked up, is that anytime someone's like, oh, the Native Americans involved, they probably turned into Wendigos. When that's like saying, like, everything is the Jersey Devil because this is one small town in Jersey that believes that they have a devil in their woods. Like, it's just, enough. Right. Enough, all right?
Okay, good way to put it.
Fucking respect!
Yeah.
And the next creature is actually an example of how we could take the ideas of the CROATOAN people and bring them into the forefront of the legend to kind of add a little spooky shit to the legend.
Correct Native American
the correct Native American culture here. The CROATOAN people. They believed in a devil in the woods, which is a reptilian-looking spirit that would cause people to become greedy and jealous amongst those that they have contact with. So basically the spirit would float on in and it would look like a serpent, and it would make people kind of like look at their neighbors like, I'm jealous and greedy of you.
This is like deep-rooted lizard people.
It would be possible that this is why the Englishmen reacted so hard towards the missing cup, because they were in fact actually possessed by this reptilian spirit, causing them to be greedy and what was the other word I used? Jealous. Even though the Succotan had been so kind to them, they attacked. They burned down the village. What? Sorry, Succotan. Why? Why'd they burn down the village? Because they were possessed by a reptilian creature, spirit.
I mean, if you sensibly, like, that is.
Were you gonna say if you think about it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you think about it, kind of like trying to draw a conclusion for something terrible that these people did to them for seemingly no reason.
Yeah.
You know, I can kind of get why it comes down to things like reptilian spirits that cause it. Just these people are terrible people.
And to be totally honest, right, the devil in the woods that came out is just the English people. It's not an actual reptilian spirit.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, one of the most beautiful and terrifying ideas that the locals had that could explain what happened was the island spirit. This spirit was said to be the governing force of the islands in the area, including Roanoke and the CROATOAN. This spirit was said to be kind to those who treated the land with respect. But if you abuse the land and its people, aka the English, the spirit would absorb you into the land, turning man into creatures, trees, rocks, and soil. This would mean the people of Roanoke actually never left. Another common thing that people say is, it's witchcraft and black magic, but that's just ignorance. Because they're not Christian doesn't mean they're practicing black magic. Get over yourself. So those are the, like, creatures / ideas from the natives of what could have happened. Now we're going to get into the word CROATOAN and the weird history that the word has had. And what this could mean for our colonists in Roanoke.
Okay.
It would turn out the word CROATOAN will go on to have a sort of mythology of its own, appearing at very strange points in history, but having a very common theme. Here's a short list I found. Number 1. When famous horror poet and story writer Edgar Allan Poe was dying, it is believed that CROATOAN was the last word that he said on his deathbed.
Weird. I feel like he would do that just to fuck with people.
From what I know of, Edgar Allan Poe did not die in a bed, but in a gutter.
Yeah, didn't he die as like a...
I don't think anybody was with him when he died. Isn't that the whole point?
Yeah.
What?
Because I'm...
CROATOAN was also found scribbled on the journal of Amelia Earhart, even after she disappeared in 1937. How did they find her journal?
Where are you getting this from? I think this is like a WikiHow article on what happened to CROATOAN.
I promise it could be. The word was also carved into a post on the last bed that horror author Ambrose Bierce slept in before he mysteriously vanished. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, the notorious stagecoach robber, Black Bart, of course, carved the word into his cell of his prison before he was released. But also reportedly, he was a convicted robber who was released from prison. Obviously, he's not going to be like, I am Black Bart!
Yeah, maybe he also liked American history.
CROATOAN was also found on the final page of the logbook of the ship Carol A. Deering was on when it crashed into Cape Herret. How did they find it, though, it crashed? I'm confused by all this. So you take that information however you like, but there is a common theme here. They all disappeared.
Interesting.
Just like the colonists at Roanoke.
And people just...
Case closed. Book done, sealed, signed, delivered. I'm yours.
Yeah. Wait, that's it. People just started writing it in cases of... Or people are claiming to have found it in cases of disappearances and stuff. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I found this list pretty short. It was just a blog, and I just thought it was really funny, so I added it. I don't know if any of this is true. I mean, the first two, I feel like, don't make sense. I don't know who the next two are, and then the last one, also, how did they find it in a book of a ship that was underwater?
Well,
it's made of water. And
to be fair, it crashed into a cape, so maybe it crashed into like the port of the town, and there's no one on board it. So I don't know. But I'm also defending.
But no one was on board, which I think is alluding to the fact that they all disappeared because the word CROATOAN was in the ship. And now the part that we've all been waiting for. In the back of our head, it's aliens. Alien time! It's motherfucking alien time! It's motherfucking alien time! So finally we come to the idea that settlers were abducted by aliens! The idea goes as follows. The settlers were taken by aliens. Any questions?
Not really, to be quite honest.
So the ideas could range from they were experimented on, they were bred with the natives to create the hybrids, studied by the aliens themselves, or brought to a different planet dimension, possibly named CROATOAN.
Cool.
I have an anonymous blog post that could sum it all up for you if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, let's do it, baby.
Here we go. The lack of bodies, there was no periods. The lack of bodies or mass grave sites at any of the proposed locations of the colonists' demise, whether to be at Roanoke, the CROATOAN Island, or inland North Carolina, throws a significant wrench into all these theories. 115 people is not a small population for a colony. Also, if they intentionally left behind the island in a planned manner or got shot by ops, it does not make sense to leave such a terrible clue like CROATOAN written on a tree. A note or a map would have been a subsequent more helpful. Yeah, obviously. Some posit this implies that the colonists fled the island quickly, or not at their own volition. Mass alien abduction would explain why no bodies have ever been found, because the aliens probably took the bodies to test harass. Additionally, it remains possible in this line of thinking that the hidden symbol found on the match below the patch by the British Museum indicate that an alien landing site or crop circle phenomenon rather than a formal British fortification. Naturally, if this were true, it would make sense as to why John White and the colonists would have such a thing hidden to not get caught by 12.
Wow.
I'm sweating.
I feel like you took on the character of whoever wrote this book.
I'm so angry.
Well.
So this guy uses the word ops for the natives and the word 12 for more or less police.
Caught by the 1-2?
Yeah.
Wow. That's what... Okay,
caught by 12. So, fuck 12. I don't actually
they kept
feel
the
that.
aliens hidden.
People say that.
So in the 1500s, they kept the alien hidden, these colonists, because they didn't want to get caught by the 1-2.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
By 12.
Also...
Just say by 12.
By 12.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Is it not 1-2?
It is 11:58 actually right now, so Beautiful. It's almost 12. So the thing with this is that this isn't real. I love this because the answer to this, because this is on just like a WikiHow, and it's totally serious. And the answer to it is like, it can't be possible because aliens don't exist that we know of. That was the actual answer to the question.
I love that answer.
But yeah, this is, anytime you look up Roanoke, you look up what happened, people like they got abducted. It's Ancient Aliens. Ancient Aliens plays a huge role in everyone thinking that humans have never done anything on their own.
Yep.
Everything is Ancient Aliens.
Yep.
If a dam was built, no way that human engineering and created this marvelous thing. It was put there by aliens because humans can't take their fingers out of their ass long enough to stop fingering their fucking prostate.
And I mean, at least you know a shitload more about this than I do. And it's 9 times out of 10, it's not like they're using it to explain the amazing things that Europeans did. They're explaining all the other people in the world.
They want to blame the Jews.
Something good.
Yeah, they will eventually bring this to, and because CROATOAN was missing, Roanoke couldn't settle because ... the Jews did something wrong.
Yep.
Jewish people, Michael Rappaport, I am sorry. I keep saying Jews. God damn it, Michael. I'm sorry. Please don't yell at me in the streets of Brooklyn. So
yeah, it either goes back to Jewish people or fucking aliens with conspiracy theories.
Well, we're going to bring it back. In conclusion.
Bring it back.
Back on you. Throw it back on that ass.
Up.
I will.
Pack that ass up into this.
I can't because then I will go out of frame. It is impossible to say exactly what happened. Period. And that's the end of the episode. Have a great one now. I'm just joking. We got like 2 more sentences. But my take is that people moved into an unknown area, where either they died from drought or the natives or both. Either way, the mystery of Roanoke will remain one of the most intriguing mysteries of its time. And until new evidence is uncovered, we will never truly know what happened to the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And then I accidentally wrote IK and the number 8 after that, which I'm pretty sure is a typo because I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for watching this episode. It's episode 15.
Well, 5. Well, too.
This was kind of like a little bit of a Thanksgiving thing. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. If you're listening this far, I love you. If you didn't listen to the whole thing, you don't get to Thanksgiving. Go fuck yourself. Make sure you stuff yourself with your turkey. Make sure you stuff your turkey with your stuffing. Make sure you stuff your turkey with yourself. You know, if you feel a little frisky before the family shows up.
There you go.
And you know, have a great time. Eat some meat.
Enjoy.
Eat some meat.
Thanks for watching, Mama Rose.
Please don't disappear, Mom. Don't
Please.
go with the aliens. Say no. It's not your time. Happy Thanksgiving. Love you. I'm super. Thanks.